Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Pedalshift Project. The Pedalshift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments on bicycle travel adventures. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride, let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net/362, and you can email the show at pedalshift@pedalshift.net or text me at 202-930-1109, and check Pedalshift out on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 362nd edition of the Pedalshift Project. My name's Tim Mooney. Thanks so much for joining. And as you can hear, I'm super sick. I'm getting over a cold. Literally the first cold I've had since... Oh, there's the cat. The cat feeder is going off. It's chaos here. The first cold that I've had since COVID. It's crazy how long it's been since I've been sick. So it's hit me pretty hard, but just got over it enough to be able to talk to you because this is the preview episode for my next tour. It is called C&O But Slow. If you are fans of poppy jazz music of the very early 1980s, you might know Chuck Mangione, a Rochester, New York native, just like me. And he had Give It All You Got, which I think was the Olympics theme song for the 1980 Olympics. And there was like a slower version of Give It All You Got. It was called Give It All You Got, But Slowly, or More Slow, or something like that. Anyways, that was the inspiration of this. What is going on? So it shocks precisely zero people, that I'm going to do the C&O as a ride. But this spring is going to be all about my 2024 goals. And one of those goals, as you may recall, was I want to slow down. I want to be able to enjoy a trip more for the experiences that go on and the moments and everything else. And, stop worrying so much about, I've got to ride this far for it to make sense, for this to be a proper trip. And I think I've been noticing that I've been doing more of that lately anyways, but I think that I really wanted to do it mindfully too. So that's the idea behind all of this. And on this episode, we're going to cover how all of this is going to go down. And forgive me for my voice here, but I'm hanging on, man. I'm hanging on. So here's the basics. We're going to be using the full-size bike, the Novara Safari. But there is a new configuration, a brand new for 2024 configuration. And we're going to talk a lot more about that in a moment here. I am going to start off the ride by taking the Amtrak Capital Limited from DC to Cumberland, Maryland, which is the far end of the trail from where I am. Why am I doing it that way? Just logistics. It just made more sense to go out there and come back. I'm also going to be riding with more of a sense on the camping parts of it. I think I would say the recent years, I've cooked a lot less in camp. I haven't brought a stove on a whole bunch of my recent tours. Well, I'm going to bring a stove on this one, and it's going to be, we'll talk more about that in a bit too. All camping, and I'll put an asterisk there. Anytime I say all camping, I'm going in assuming I'm going to do all camping, but you all know different things happen along the way where sometimes a roofed lodging situation is a better bet. And I certainly have some options, including the cabin that I'm at right now. But I am intending to do all camping. And the reason why I'm putting the asterisk there is it looks like the forecast is going to have rain for a large chunk of this trip. It's not going to start the night before when I leave, but it is going to be for the 2 full days of riding. There's a chance of rain and it's going to rain both days. It's just a question of how much and how hard. What's that going to do to the trail? How's that going to impact my ride? A lot of question marks at this point, but I am preparing for rain. And last but not least here on the basics is, as you can hear, I'm getting over this cold. Today is the first day I feel like I have any kind of energy at all. I think by the time I am getting on the train, I should be close to 100%, but you just never know. I was kind of hoping that I would be closer to 100% today. Obviously, I'm not. So you will see. I do think that there is an element of getting over this that could impact the trip. And so I'm just mentioning now because you just never know. I mean, will I have lack of energy? Will I not be feeling super motivated to get out of the tent on a cold, rainy day? There's just a lot of things to all of this. But that's kind of the point about doing this in a slow way. Because I'm not trying to go from Cumberland to DC in 3 days and only 3 days, and I'm pounding out miles and all of that, between the rain and getting over the cold, I'd be like, oh, that just doesn't sound as much fun. So now I don't have to worry about that. And so let me tell you how I'm structuring all of these things to make that all work. The first thing, kind of unrelated, but I think is the most interesting element to me, at least, of this ride, is I've got a new bicycle configuration. So for years, I have had a front rack and a rear rack on this Safari. And on the front rack, I would put my sleeping kit and perhaps a couple of other things, perhaps a bag or some other ways of carrying the gear. But this year, I have decided that I am going to remove the front rack. It's a perfectly fine front rack, but I will mention there was a downside to it that I didn't realize until last year. It is a little bit wider. The backstory on this is I took my bike to my usual shop in DC, and despite the fact that they had worked on this bike, 5 times easily, they sat there and looked at the front rack that I had put on. It was a regular rear rack turned around and put on there very sturdily. They were like, nope, this isn't safe. And I was like, okay, I've ridden thousands of miles on this, but whatever. So they insisted that they wouldn't put the rack back on. So I got a new rack. And frankly, I wanted to get a new rack anyways. That was a really old kind of Amazon-ish kind of rack. And it's really nice. I can't remember what brand it is, but it's one of the nicer ones. But it's a little bit wide. And the problem with it is that when I want to fly with this bike, as I discovered last year going to Oregon, you can't fit it into the Dogsbody bag because the Dogsbody bag is slim. And it's only basically going to be widthwise. I don't know how to describe it, but a wider front rack. I can't just take the wheels off and throw it in the bag. It just wouldn't zip shut. So I found that I had to remove the rack to go, put it back on to ride, then remove it again to fly back. Is it a big deal? No, but it's a pain. So preview, I have another tour that will involve flying, and you'll learn more about that in a few months. But the idea was I need to figure out something else here for that trip. And so I decided to borrow a little more from the backpacking world. And I now have 2 fork-mounted bags. And I'm really kind of impressed with them. They zip tie on in 3 spots. It is rock solid. And it fits a 7-liter bag on each side. These particular bags are, how should I say, extremely narrow. I mean, very, very narrow. Problematically narrow. However, I was able to fit a bunch of things in them that are useful, that take from other spots. And so what I have found is it almost was able to store everything that I needed that I had typically on the front, except a couple of things. Like I really wanted it to be able to handle the full sleep kit, maybe even elements of the tent. And it definitely can do some of that. I don't quite recall what I've ended up landing on, but they are going to do really well for me. They are waterproof. They are made of a similar material as the Ortley back rollers. They function as a back roller. They're solidly waterproof, but they're kind of limited in the types of things that they can handle. Even putting in things like a rainfly or something like that, it should fit in there, but it's so hard to get a rainfly all the way to the bottom because I can barely get my closed fist into it. So I may at some point replace those bags, but for this trip, I'm going to use them. The other thing is that I found I needed a little bit more capacity on the front to fully do the replacement. And I basically thought, hey, well, what if I just use some of those stretchy, bungee, clicky things that I used? And I, of course, cannot remember the names of them. A bunch of you utilize the same brand as I do. They're great. And I was able to easily configure a setup where I put effectively close to my full sleep kit into the same bag that I used on the front rack before, the front platform. So technically I could probably just put the whole thing in there and put other things into the 2 7-liter bags. And I may consider actually doing that. And as a result, what do I end up with? I'll tell you what, it's going to be a lot more stable, I feel like. It's much more nimble moving around. The bags come up very high, so I can't do real extreme steering. But frankly, you don't really do that when you're fully loaded anyways. So I'm not going to be taking real deep, wide turns. I'll lean into those turns as a method of doing that anyways. But it works really well. I'll be really interested to see how it works on this particular ride, because it's going to inform, obviously, the later tour that I'm already starting to plan right now. So that's a new configuration. I'll make sure I get pictures in the show notes for the first episode so that you get a way of seeing all of that. Really inexpensive. I think it was $50 or so. And like I said, they seem pretty rock solid. We'll see what happens on a bumpy trail over time. I think they seem to be quite good. All right, so that's the new configuration. Excited to go with it. Excited to move with this. Next up, let's talk pacing. As I talked about before, we're slowing things down here. The first night when I get into Cumberland, you get in, assuming the train is on time, which is always a fingers crossed, right? It's right around sunset. So I'm going to be riding in the dark. I'm going to do a little bit. I'm probably going to grab dinner in Cumberland. I'm probably going to grab something for lunch the next day, maybe. I think I might, just because it'll be my one chance to get kind of like food that I don't make. So I may grab a sandwich or something else like that to have with me on the ride, because that lunch spot may be around the Paw Paw tunnel, for instance. But that night, I've tried this before, and it's really dark and it's really hard, and the trail can be pretty ruddy in a few spots. But that's my one dry night. And I think I'm going to try to push to Potomac Forks, which is 20 miles down trail. Now, the thing that's really going to be problematic is it's going to be close to a new moon that night. And that means we got no lights, none whatsoever. The only lights I'm going to have are the ones I have on me. So I'm going to try a combination of a headlamp and my front bike light and just see if I can flood the trail with enough light that I can safely ride. If I can't, Evetts Creek is only a few miles down the trail. I can camp there. I've done that before. That's what I did last time. There are a couple of other campgrounds along the way too. I'm just going to see how it goes. I love Potomac Forks. It's one of my favorite campsites on the entire trail. I've done other tours where I've camped there. It's just cool because it's away from everything, but it's got really interesting features. There's a pond. The campsite's on the other side of the trail compared to where most of them are. I just like elements of it all. It usually is very private. I've never camped where anybody else has been there. I would love for that to be my first night. Also, I think it's going to start raining overnight. And it would be good to get those 20 miles of trail done, because those are the ones that tend to get the most rain impacted. And this week, we're getting rain here in the region. So I expect it to be a bit soft to begin with. So we're just going to have to see how it all ends up going. Conditions are going to dictate how things go. But I would really like that kind of day zero to include some actual miles. Beyond that, I don't have any specific plans. I really don't. In fact, the end of the tour is really up in the air as well. I am not sure where I am going to finish. I have 2 train tickets, believe it or not. And the reason is because Amtrak does not make it super easy for you to change a ticket for a different destination or different departure point. I think I would have to call them, and I don't know if my bike reservation would work with that. So what I've done is I've made two cancelable train reservations, both with a bike reservation. And there were a couple of slots left, so I don't feel like I'm stealing a bike reservation from anybody. Later in the year, I don't think I would do this because the slots of bikes available are really limited. So I figure if you haven't planned your bike trip by now on the C&O, it's cool. I'm not going to worry about you so much. But later in the season, I would not do this because I think it would be a bit of a jerk move to have 2 bike reservations when I'm only intending on using 1. Anyways, so one of the spots is Martinsburg. If I choose this, that means that I am really slowing things down. I would be getting off the trail only about 80 miles down trail or so. And then there's probably about a 10 or so mile road route that gets me to Martinsburg. So it would be a very short couple, 2.5 days of riding. It's 2.25 really. And, that would mean that a whole bunch of factors kicked in. I was having more fun camping. I was maybe not feeling as strong because I'm getting over the cold. The weather was really making things less than awesome. But that's the minimum that I would have to do without having to pull in some other things like, getting Ubers or Lyfts or ride shares or anything like that, which I really don't want to do because I'd have a muddy bike and nobody's going to want to take my bike that way. So there's that one. That's the kind of short but awesome trip because that would be really leaning into the camping thing. If I end up deciding and if I end up riding and just really liking the miles as they're going, well, then I'll end up at Harpers Ferry then on the third day. And both the train leaves if it's on schedule, around 11 a.m. from Martinsburg and around 11:30 a.m. from Harpers Ferry. But that's a huge difference in terms of bike miles. It's wild how fast the train gets between those two towns. But if that's the case, then I am really pushing, let's say I really want to get to Shepherdstown and want to have dinner on my final night there. The miles are going well. The rain that's forecast doesn't really happen. The trail conditions are really good. There's a whole host of different things. If this becomes more of I really want to be on the bike more than I want to be focusing in on the sites and the camping, that's available to me too. And there's no in between. It's one or the other. So I do think that honestly, just given the conditions that I'm going to be looking at, especially if I'm not feeling much better by the time it comes about, I would have to think I'd feel better by then. The Martinsburg one is the safe one. There's just, I don't have to ride as hard. I can stay in the tent longer. I can do shorter mileage days. I just need to make sure that I'm somewhat close to Williamsport by the time I am finishing my second day of riding, because then it would be basically just getting off the trail and riding a road route to the Martinsburg train station. It's not a great ride. It's on US Highway 11, which has got a shoulder the whole way, but it's not, I don't see a lot of bikes on it. I think it'd be fine. I'll certainly have lights and I'll be prepared. And obviously I'll be all lit up for that particular ride. It would be a Saturday morning. So I just don't expect that it would be that big of a deal. I've never done it before actually from there. So actually I do think that it's a worthwhile ad, for anybody that is looking at, having a good, safe and legal crossing of the river, because that bridge on Highway 11 is a legal crossing spot for a bike. Unlike some, shall we say, other spots that I have looked at. All right, so that's the pacing. It could be longer, could be shorter. It's going to depend on how I feel and on the conditions. Food and water. Well, I got to be ready to take care of myself, honestly. I'm going to likely carry much more food than I have on past trips. I did mention I'm going to try to pick up some food in Cumberland on the first night. But once you get past Cumberland, you're really not hitting any other really decent options until you hit Hancock. And I may not hit Hancock until maybe the end of my I don't know how long it's going to be till I get to Hancock. So I am going to carry food with me. But I've decided that I'm going to try more of those kind of pre-made camping meals. I've done the cheap way of doing it before with, mac and cheese and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? I think I want to do these freeze-dried camping meals. Are they great? Not really, but I've already pre-ordered a bunch of them. And I thought I would go with that. So that's what I'm going to go with. The other thing that I will mention is that the Park Service has now stopped treating the well water all the way down the trail. They've been threatening doing that for a while, and I believe it was last year that they first did it. So I am going to be prepared with a brand new water treatment system. I have a Sawyer squeeze that I've used for a while. Interestingly, I've seen a lot of people on YouTube recently who have had major problems with their Sawyers where they failed on trail and all sorts of things. I haven't had that experience yet, but I got kind of scared away from going with Sawyer again because of that. Again, don't know, haven't had personal experience, but just thought, okay, let me see what else is out there. And because I'm going to need to do more water than maybe just a water bottle, I thought, maybe it would be a good idea to get one of those gravity-fed ones. So I got kind of a no-name gravity-fed version that will do about a liter of water every couple of minutes, which I think is fantastic. What I'll do is I'll just get a bunch of water, put it into the bag, hang it up, and have it feed into one of my feeder bags that I've got, which is a collapsible plastic bag that weighs nothing. I'm not going to try to carry as much water as I do in the past. Because of the way they used to treat those wells, it tasted like iodine. I didn't like that. If they're not treating this water anymore, I'm going to assume it's going to taste a little bit better. Who knows? We'll see. So I'm going to not carry as much water. I'm going to carry what I need, not what I need for the whole ride. That'll keep some weight off the bike as well. So I'm kind of excited to test all of this out. There's also the possibility of using river water too. But if I've got the well, that's probably the better bet. But the river is always an option. Of course, that water could really be polluted with outlets of sewer systems and stuff like that. And you just never know. The water does move reasonably swiftly, which is a better sign. I'll do that if I need to, but I hope not to. I have not checked the Park Service to see if they put the handles on the pumps, but by May, they usually have. So I don't think I'm too concerned about all of that. So I'll have plenty of water to drink anytime I need it, and I'll have plenty of water to make my meals as I need it. So a couple of other places I'll pass by, which I may pick up food, who knows. We'll just kind of take it as it is, which is kind of the theme. Weather, as I mentioned, it's wet, but not hot. The first night, it will be coming off of an 80-something degree day, so it should be warm in the evening and dry. I'm hoping the trail conditions are good so I can bang out those miles as I mentioned, but we will see. I will be prepared. I'm going to be bringing, I think, perhaps multiple rain jackets. I'm just going to see what the weather looks like the day before. I think we'll have a better sense of when the rain is going to be hitting then too. Because right now we're in the, for entertainment purposes, only weather forecasts. And it's just tough to know when the rain is going to hit. So I'll be ready for it though. That's going to, as I mentioned before, impact the nature of the ride. If it's heavy, cold rain, I don't think it's going to be that cold, but could be certainly chilly in the mornings if it's raining. Heck, I may stay in the tent a little bit longer. I may try to find ways to roll with what the weather gives me. I'm going to play it by ear. I'm really going to let the weather and how I feel dictate how I do these miles. So we'll see how it goes. I'm ready. I'll be ready for anything. I'll be ready to say, you know what, the conditions and how I feel say, I'm going to watch a video on my phone, or I'm going to read a book or listen to an audiobook or a podcast. I'm just going to enjoy the camping side of things a little bit more. There's nothing better than being warm and dry in a tent when it's raining outside from my perspective. I don't know about you. A couple of other things I'll mention just to kind of wrap things up here as we go along. The Paw Paw Tunnel is fully reopened, thank goodness, because I don't think I would do this trip with this weather feeling the way that I do going up and down that trail. That's just a really rough trail. I'm glad I've done it a few times. I would prefer never to do it again if I don't have to. Can't wait to go through the tunnel. It's been a really long time. Can't remember if they closed the tunnel before COVID or not. I'll have to go back and look at the other tour journals, but it's been a while. It's been years, and I'm really excited about that. I am not intending to come back here to the cabin where I'm recording right now, although it's certainly an option if I want to. It's a slog to get up here. You have to climb up out of the valley, and it's 7 miles from the trail. If I take the not legal crossing opportunity, I could also come and do a road route across the legal bridge from Hancock. I'd have to really need it in order to do it. I think I'd be much happier just getting a camping situation in Hancock. So we'll see how it goes. It's there if I need it, but I don't think it'll be anything more than a backup option. The name of the game, it's slow and steady. It's enjoying the ride. I'm not going to be intending to bang out miles, although if it feels good, I will do that. My natural pace on that trail is to bang out 60 miles in a day. Will I do that? Don't know. Maybe I will. If I do, then obviously I'll be able to do this ride very, very easily. If not, I will be taking the Martinsburg route. We're just going to have to see how it goes. And that's what's kind of exciting about this one. This again goes against so much of my planning aspects, but I've planned it enough in my head that I know all of the options that'll be available for me. And I really am hoping that I'm not waking up on the Saturday morning going, I really, really need to sprint to make these miles. I want that last day to feel very casual to get back in time for the train. But you just never know. Things can go. I may have to get up at break of dawn or before dawn so I can pack up so I can bang out all the miles with as much sunlight as possible. We'll just see how it goes. You will know because you'll be hearing about it starting next week. We'll get the tour journals out to you. So excited for this ride. I don't know what the podcast part of it is going to be like. I think it might be a lot of soundscapes and reporting of staying in my tent, or it could be, hey, I'm just banging out these miles and it feels real good and I love the new bike configuration. We'll just see how it goes. So join me next week for the C&O But Slow.
And as always, we like to close out the show with a special shout out to the Pedalshift Society. Because of support from listeners like you, Pedalshift is a weekly bicycle touring podcast with a global community. Expanding into live shows and covering new tours. If you like what you hear, you can support the show for $5, $2, or even $1 a month. And there's one-shot and annual options if you're not into the small monthly thing. Check it all out at pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lean, Andrew McGregor, Michael Hart, Keith Nagel, Brock Dittus, Thomas Skadow, Marco Lowe, Terrence Manson, Harry Telgadis, Chris Barron, Mark Van Ram, Brad Hipwell, Mr. T, Nathan Poulton, Stephen Dickerson, Vince LaGreco, Cody Florchinger, Tom Beninati, Greg Braithwaite, Sandy Pizzio, Jeff Muster, Seth Pollock, Joseph Quinn, Drew Porter, Byron Patterson, Joaquin Robber, Ray Jackson, Jeff Fry, Kenny Mikey, Lisa Hart, John Denkler, Steve Hankel, Miguel Quinones, Alejandro Aviles Reyes, Keith Spangler, Greg Towner, Jody Zaranin, Lucas Barwick, Michael Baker, Brian Bechtal, Reinhard Biggle, Greg Middlemiss, Connie Moore, William Gothman, Brian Benton, Joan Churchill, Mike Bender, Rick Weinberg, Billy Crafton, Gary Matushak, Greg Latoile Lopez, James Sloan, Jonathan Dillard, John Funk, Ronald Paroli, Dave Roll, Brian Hafner, Misha LeBlanc, Ari Messenger, David Grotke, Todd Grossbeck, Wally Estrella, Sue Reinert, John Lico, Stephen Granada, Philip Mueller, Robert Lackey, Dominic Carroll, Jackie McCullough, John Hickman, Carl Presseau, David Neves, Patty Louise, Terry Fitzgerald, Peter Steinmetz, Timothy Fitzpatrick, Michael Azuski, Hank O'Donnell, David Zanoni, David Weil, Matthew Sponsella, Chad Reno, Spartan Dale, Carolyn Ferguson, Peggy Littlefield, Lauren Allensmith, Eric Burns, Thomas Pearl, Darren McKibben, Richard Stewart, Dave Fletcher, Jack Smith, Luke Parkinson, Ryan Patterson, Sarus Faravar, John Gardner, Sam Scruggs, Dwight Pintinger, Connie Bowder, Rob Merrifield, and thanks to all past and anonymous folks for helping make this show happen. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedalshift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedalshift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.